Good morning. I know that I'm coming from my living room talking to you all this morning, and I miss you as our church family, but I hope that you're staying safe and you're staying healthy. During these troublesome times and times of trials and tribulations, I want to encourage you. You know, we're going to be quarantined as families, and take this time to really get back to the kitchen table. See that it's there and gather around it as families. Enjoy this time to the best of our ability. Get to know your family again. Listen to your children. Talk to your children. Talk to those you love. Listen to their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations. Have prayers around the family table. That's one thing that I've been thinking about throughout these few last days, that just the things we can do that we've really forgotten as families. But I want to encourage you also that the work of the church is never done. Continue to pray for the church. Continue to pray for the community of Carthage and this nation in general, because this is a time when Christians, we're going to shine. We don't want to forget those who are shut-ins and those who are widows and widowers. We want to continue to check on them, but be cautious as we do that. But also it's going to be a time for this country to shine. We're going to see the good come out of this country that we've not seen in a long time. We're going to see incredible acts of charity, incredible acts of love come out of this also. It's going to be some trying times. It's going to be some things that we have to change privately and publicly in our lives. And it will be a time of just being a nuisance. But we're promised that we can overcome. And we will, both spiritually and as the church and as a nation. There's something that's been going on that is talked about a lot, that really it's kind of along with the coronavirus. It started it, but that is the stock market. When you look at what the stock market has done this last week or two, we see that it has just plunged. And that's a lot of what I hear about the older people that I work with, is that their 401ks, their retirements, you name it, have just taken a terrible, terrible loss these last 2 weeks. And when it comes to their money, they're so worried. I want us this morning to really think a little bit about our money. Take your Bibles, if you would, and turn to James chapter 5. In his book of Common Sense, James chapter 5, verse 1, James is talking here to Christian businessmen, Christian landowners. He's talking to these people who have gone out and have hired workers, and how we treat those people who help us, work for us, and treat the ones that we owe money to, and really us as workers, how we are to be treated. And James gives some pretty honest evidence here of how we should take care of these people. Listen and read along with me, chapter 5, verses 1 through 6. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, your garments and moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you, and you will eat your flesh like fire. You've laid up treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which are kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury, in self-indulgence. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous person. He does not resist you. He tells us here that there are these rich people, and the way that they are treating each other, it's very sad. It's very sad how they are treating these people that have been working for them. And he tells these landowners and these rich business owners, he says that you need to pay them. And if you go back to the Levitical law, they are to be paid in full at the end of the day. Whenever that job was done, they were not to withhold that money until the next day even. They were to be paid that day. And here James is saying you're not even fulfilling that. You're withholding that money. They're working in your lands. And he really says that you're defrauding them by not paying them. And these workers have no recourse. There's nothing that they can do except, I'm just not going to work for you anymore. So he goes on and he tells them that not only are you defrauding these people, you're living a life of luxury. And that money that you're living this life of luxury on really belongs to these workers. How shameful. how arrogant, how influential these people are with their money, defrauding and bribing the court system to get what they want whenever they didn't want to pay a worker. And these poor workers, these common people, again, they have no way of going against these rich people. And James, some of the most fiercest words he uses in his book are right here in this writing about what's going to happen to them and how these people really are. Now, if you will notice here in James, it says that these people are going to be murdered. I don't think literally that's what's going on. It is so corrupt in the court system with these rich landowners and businessmen that it's like they've been murdered. It's like the life has been sucked out of them. There's nowhere to turn. There's no one to go to. So they're almost like they're condemned, being put to death because they can no longer maybe feed their families. They're being put to death and condemned in their heart because they can no longer pay their bills. Maybe they're being condemned and put to death in their soul and their emotions because of just they need that money. But these wealthy Christian landowners and businessmen will not pay them, and are even going to the point of obstructing justice and obstructing justice from these people who need to receive it. So James here does not beat around the bush when he thinks about Christians who are taking advantage of those who have less. He says, you rich people, you landowners, you business owners, and you think that the influence that you have, he says, do you not know what is going to happen to you? That's why he says if you understood what is going to happen to you, you would ultimately weep. You would howl in the miseries that are about to come upon you. You have the oppressed poor man, but judgment is coming to you. And then James in these verses begins to talk about money. And he says that you are living this high life. And that someday that money will one day before the Lord of hosts, it will talk up a storm. Friends, money talks. Now we think today that when we hear that term, money talks, it talks, doesn't it? We can throw out some $100 bills and we think money talks. We can write a big check. Money talks. Yes, money talks if we want to maybe persuade the court system in our favor. Money talks. But James says here, money talks. And we're not going to like what it has to say in the day of judgment. Because James says your money, your possessions, your wealth will give testimony against you. Those of us who are rich, we're rich. And he says those of you who are using the system to take advantage of others, I hope none of us are doing that. But he says if that's what you're doing, you better understand what's coming towards you. James says, or you would weep and you would howl. I love what 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 10 says. And this is written from the Apostle Paul to the rich and to the poor, to those who have, those who don't have, the business owners, the landowners, and the unwealthy alike. He writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 10, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one of you may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil. James tells us if you've used your wealth improperly, your wealth will speak out against you on the day of judgment. Listen to what Proverbs 11 verse 4 says. Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. The riches of this life can lie to us, can it? The world says if you have wealth, you can be protected. You're secure. When you're wealthy, you can be protected and secure from things. No one can touch you. No one can touch you today. But James says there's a day coming when you will be touched and you will be prosecuted by the wealth you have. Listen, materialism is an attitude. Materialism is not just something that belongs to the rich. Materialism is something that can belong to the rich and poor alike. You see, materialism is whenever you put anything in front of God. Now think about that for just a moment. Materialism to a rich person can be that gain. You go back whenever Jesus talks about the young man who had so much, and he's going to build barns. He accumulated so much wealth that he couldn't spend it in 2, 3, or 4 lifetimes. So what does he do? He's going to build more to gain more wealth. That's materialism. Materialism is whenever you take something and you trust it more than you trust God. I don't care if you're rich. I don't care if you're poor. You can be materialistic. And James is condemning people. Look at James chapter 5. He's condemning people, non-believers and Christians, rich especially, and yes, you can be poor and have this same attitude toward those people if you abuse them, if you do not pay them, if you do not use your wealth wisely. Now, James gives us 3 thoughts here in these verses. We're going to cover one of these thoughts this morning. Next week, we're going to finish this video and cover the other 2 thoughts about these 6 verses. The first thought that I want to share with you this morning from these verses, heaped up wealth is going to be a witness against you. If you trust in wealth for your security, if you think that wealth protects you, and you think that gaining more wealth will give you more security and more protection, look at verses 2 and 3, because there's a problem there. Accumulating more wealth and more stuff, that's the problem. One day, what you have accumulated will be deteriorated. Listen to verses 2 and 3 again. Your riches have rotted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver have corroded, and their corrosion will be evidence against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You've laid up treasure in the last days. He says stockpiling wealth and stockpiling stuff is a measure of extreme selfishness. Can I ask you this morning just a simple question? What clothes get moth-eaten? It's not the clothes that I'm wearing, is it? The clothes that get moth-eaten are those clothes that are in the back of your closet, aren't they? Those clothes that we've probably forgotten about. What tools get corroded? It's those tools that lay in the back of the toolbox, in the bed of your pickup, under the seat of a truck or a car, somewhere we forget all about them, and they rust. They deteriorate. You know, we have so much stuff in this nation. We are so blessed spiritually in this nation for all the blessings we've had physically and materially. I want to challenge us. I know we give to Fairhaven Children's Home, and that is awesome. That's a great work we do. We need to continue that. Don't forget about those young people over there and the hardships they have, and that campus over there, the good work that they do. We can continue to help them. There are things around our houses, every single one of us, that we can get rid of, we can give away, we can find somebody who needs that. Do you know somebody that can use some tools that you don't use anymore? I've got a lot of tools that I don't use, and I can stand to give some away. Some of us might even have garages so full that we can't even pull our vehicles in. Let's give that stuff away. Let's find somebody who can use the stuff that we don't need anymore. Accumulating that wealth and that stuff. James says, be careful stockpiling your wealth. It will give an account for you one day. Now listen to me very carefully. I'm not talking about proper savings for retirement. That's just being smart. It's being wise. Whenever the time of our life, whenever we want to do some relaxation and we want to retire, that's not what James is talking about. It's whenever it's the center of our life. Whenever we are stockpiling it just because we hoard that wealth, we're so materialistic. You know, I love what Jesus teaches us about our wealth in Luke chapter 16, especially verse 9. He tells us there in verse 9, Luke chapter 16, and I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of righteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. How you have used your wealth in this world today will give testimony of how you will use your wealth in the next life. Have you hoarded up wealth? The NIV, I thought was very interesting here. The NIV says, will testify against you. These are trying times. These are times that I've never been through in my life. When it comes to both the virus that we are up against and the stock market and what it has been doing. We all enjoy the stock market going up, don't we? That was fun. We all made money. But sometimes you remember the old adage, what goes up must come down. Let me challenge you this morning. Then I want to finish with just some personal thoughts. Take your finances. Take your spiritual bank account and put it in God. He will never go down. He will always go up. Put those treasures in heaven where moth and rust will not destroy and a thief cannot break in and take it away. Remember, money talks. Now from a personal note, we'll continue next week with these thoughts on money talking here in James chapter 5. We'll look at 2 more points. I want to encourage you though this morning. Stay strong. Stay vigilant. And encourage one another. You know, I'm always encouraged. We've been studying the book of Revelation in our ladies' class. And 7 times Jesus really encouraged those churches to overcome. Friends, we're going to overcome. We're promised that. We're going to probably be a little uncomfortable. And we're going to miss each other as our spiritual family and as friends and as loved ones. But as always, I want to say to each and every one of you, we love you. We care about you. And we do miss you. And one of these days, probably a few weeks, we will be back together meeting at the church building on the first day of the week, singing songs of praise, lifting our voices, communing together before the table set before God, lifting our voices together in prayer. What a thought. God bless you all. Be safe.